Miranda's hands moved with practiced grace as she signed hello to the two silent children, and in that instant, everything shifted. The temperature in the upscale restaurant seemed to drop as the Korean billionaire's dark eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made her breath catch. His twins, beautiful, forgotten little souls, lit up like stars for the first time in months. But what Miranda didn't know was that speaking to those children would make her a target. That the man watching her with barely controlled fascination was more dangerous than any fairy tale, and that by sunrise her ordinary life would be shattered beyond recognition. Because some acts of kindness don't just change lives, they ignite obsessions that burn everything else to ash. Welcome to our channel. You are special. Before we continue, please hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps us grow and create more stories like this for you. Your support means everything to this channel. Miranda adjusted her apron for the third time in as many minutes, her dark fingers smoothing the crisp white fabric as she surveyed Chandelier, Manhattan's most exclusive Korean fusion restaurant. The place dripped money from every crystal fixture, every black marble surface, every gold-trimmed menu. At 26, she'd worked enough high-end establishments to recognize the particular breed of wealthy that dined here, the kind that looked through service staff like they were part of the furniture. Table 12 needs water refills, her manager Marcus hissed, barely glancing at her. And for God's sake, smile more. These people tip based on personality. Miranda bit back a retort. She needed this job. Her grandmother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves, and positions at Chandelier came with benefits that actually covered specialists. So she smiled, grabbed her water pitcher, and headed toward table 12. That's when she saw them. Two children sat at the corner table, a boy and a girl who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. They were breathtakingly beautiful, with features that suggested Korean and possibly European heritage. Porcelain skin, dark hair cut in matching styles, eyes like polished obsidian. But what struck Miranda wasn't their appearance, it was their stillness. While other diners laughed, chatted, clinked glasses, these children sat frozen like museum pieces, their small hands rested in their laps, their eyes tracked movement with an almost desperate hunger, but their mouths remained closed, their bodies rigidly contained. The elegant woman seated across from them, their grandmother perhaps, based on age, spoke animatedly on her phone in Korean, occasionally gesturing at the children as if they were props rather than people. Miranda's chest tightened. She'd seen that look before, the look of children who'd learned that being seen came at too high a price. She was halfway through her water refills when she noticed the girl's hands twitch. Just a small movement, fingers forming a shape against her thigh, before the girl caught herself and went still again. But Miranda had caught it. She'd recognized it. Sign language. The realization hit her like electricity. These children were deaf. Miranda's grandmother had been profoundly deaf since birth. Miranda had grown up signing before she could speak, navigating 2 languages, 2 worlds. It had been years since Grandma Rose had passed, but the language lived in Miranda's muscle memory, like breathing. She finished the water refills, her mind racing. Protocol said to mind her business, serve the food, collect the tips, go home. Protocol said not to interfere with wealthy patrons and their complicated family dynamics. But Miranda had never been good at following protocol when children were hurting. She set down her pitcher and moved toward the corner table. The woman barely glanced up from her phone call, which suited Miranda fine. She positioned herself in the children's line of sight and, heart hammering, raised her hands. Hello? My name is Miranda. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The little girl's mouth fell open. The boy's eyes went impossibly wide. They stared at Miranda as if she'd just performed actual magic, as if her signing had torn open a hole in reality itself. Then the girl's hands flew up, signing so fast that Miranda had to mentally slow down to catch it. "You can see us. You understand? Please, please, are you real?" Miranda's throat closed up. She signed back. "I'm real. I see you. What are your names?" "I'm Hannah," the girl signed, her small face breaking into the most heartbreaking smile Miranda had ever witnessed. "This is my brother, Hyun. Nobody talks to us. Not for so long. Not since—" The boy, Hyun, cut his sister off with a sharp gesture. His signs were more controlled, more cautious. "Our father says we shouldn't bother hearing people. They don't want to be bothered by us." Miranda felt rage bloom hot in her chest. What kind of father taught his deaf children they were burdens? She signed, "Your father is wrong. You're not bothering me. I want to talk to you." "What are you doing?" The voice cut through the dining room like a blade, low, accented, and carrying enough authority to make every head turn. Miranda straightened, pulse spiking, and found herself facing the most arresting man she'd ever seen. He was tall, easily 6'3", with the kind of build that suggested serious time in a gym beneath his immaculately tailored black suit. His face was all sharp angles and perfect proportions, the kind of masculine beauty that belonged on magazine covers. But it was his eyes that stopped Miranda's breath. Dark, intense, burning with an emotion she couldn't name as he stared at her with absolute focus. And those eyes were fixed on her hands. "I asked you a question," he said, each word precisely enunciated in an accent that was mostly American, but still carried the rhythms of his native Korean. "What are you doing to my children? My children." So this was the father, the billionaire, if the whispers among the staff were accurate. The man who'd reserved the entire private section of chandelier for his family dinner and tipped so lavishly that every server in the restaurant had volunteered to cover his table. The man who was currently looking at Miranda like she'd committed an unforgivable crime. "I was greeting them," Miranda said, lifting her chin. She wasn't afraid of entitled rich people. She'd dealt with worse. "Your children." By using sign language, he stepped closer, and Miranda caught the scent of expensive cologne, something dark and woody that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "How do you know sign language?" "My grandmother was deaf. I grew up signing." Miranda glanced at Hana and Hyun, who were watching the exchange with wide, fearful eyes. They'd gone still again, hands folded, and it broke something in her to see them retreat. "Sir, your children were sitting here being completely ignored by everyone at this table. I just wanted to—" "To what?" His eyes flashed dangerously. "To interfere. To make assumptions about my family. To decide you know better than I do what my children need." The injustice of it made Miranda's hands curl into fists. "I saw 2 kids who were being treated like they didn't exist. Yeah, I interfered, and I'd do it again." Something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Nobody seemed to talk back to this man. The older woman at the table had ended her phone call and was staring at them with fascination, her perfectly manicured hands hovering over her pearl necklace. "You don't know anything about us," he said. But some of the heat had left his voice. He looked at his children, and for just a second, his expression cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Pain, guilt. "I protect them the best way I know how. By teaching them they're invisible," Miranda shot back. "By letting them sit in a crowded restaurant without anyone acknowledging they exist. By keeping them safe from people who will hurt them." The words burst out of him with shocking emotion. "By making sure they don't get attached to strangers who will just leave. By—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching. When he spoke again, his voice had gone dangerously soft. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Miranda should have backed down, should have apologized, retreated to the kitchen, let this powerful man have the last word. But she'd seen Hana's smile, the desperate joy in Hyun's eyes, and she couldn't let it go. "I know your daughter just asked me if I was real," she said quietly. "I know your son thinks he's bothering people just by existing, and I know that whatever you're trying to protect them from, isolation isn't the answer." The silence stretched between them, charged and heavy. His eyes searched her face, and Miranda felt exposed under that gaze, like he was cataloguing every detail, every micro-expression. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Miranda Davis." "Miranda Davis?" He repeated it slowly, as if testing how it felt in his mouth. "I'm Jinwoo Park, but you probably already knew that." She didn't, actually, but she wasn't about to admit it. She just waited, heart pounding, wondering if she was about to get fired. Jinwoo glanced at his children, then back at Miranda. "Sit down." "What?" "Sit down." He gestured to an empty chair. "If you're going to lecture me about my parenting, the least you can do is join us for dinner." It wasn't a request. It was a command, delivered with the absolute certainty of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The older woman, his mother, made a small sound of protest, but Jinwoo silenced her with a look. Miranda looked at Marcus across the restaurant. Her manager's face had gone pale, his eyes wide with something between horror and awe. This was so far beyond protocol, it had left protocol in another galaxy. But Hana was signing at her, "Please stay, please," and Hyun was nodding, and Miranda had never been able to resist children who needed her. "I'm working," she said. "Not anymore." Jinwoo pulled out the chair with one hand. "I'm buying out your shift. Whatever you would have made tonight, I'll triple it. Sit down, Miranda Davis, and talk to my children." It was possibly the worst decision Miranda would ever make. She sat down. The next hour was surreal. Miranda sat at a table that probably cost more to reserve than she made in a month, wearing a server's uniform while a billionaire and his mother looked on, and signed with two children who devoured her attention like starving creatures. Hana was the talkative one, her signs rapid and enthusiastic as she told Miranda about her favourite books, her dance classes, the art projects she made in her room. Hyun was more reserved but just as hungry, watching Miranda's hands with absolute focus, occasionally adding details his sister forgot. "We go to a special school," Hyun signed. "It's good. Everyone there signs, but we're the only Korean kids and nobody looks like us." "That must be lonely," Miranda signed back. "It's okay," but his face said it wasn't okay at all. "We have each other." Jinwoo watched the entire exchange in silence, his dark eyes never leaving Miranda. She could feel his gaze like a physical weight, tracking her every movement, every expression. It should have been uncomfortable. It should have made her self-conscious. Instead, it made her hyper-aware of her own body, of the way her uniform suddenly felt too tight, of how her pulse jumped every time she accidentally caught his eye. She focused on the children instead. They were bright, creative, funny kids who'd been locked away from the world. As they relaxed, their personalities emerged. Hana's mischievous humour, Hyun's careful thoughtfulness. They argued about which ice cream flavour was best, ganging up on Miranda when she suggested vanilla was underrated, signing so fast and gleefully that it made her laugh. "They like you," Jinwoo said suddenly, his voice cut through the comfortable signing, drawing Miranda's attention. "They don't like most people." "Most people don't bother trying to talk to them," Miranda replied, switching back to spoken English. The older woman, who'd introduced herself as Mrs. Park, Jinwoo's mother, had been watching Miranda with calculating eyes, but she'd said little. "That's intentional," Jinwoo said flatly. "My children have been through enough. They don't need—" He paused, seeming to reconsider his words. "What do you do when you're not working here?" The subject change was abrupt. Miranda blinked. I'm studying online for my master's in special education, focusing on deaf and hard of hearing students. His eyebrows rose slightly. Special education. I want to work with kids like Hana and Hyun, help them navigate both worlds, deaf and hearing. Miranda glanced at the twins, who were now showing her pictures on Hana's tablet. Help them feel less alone. Noble. The word could have been sarcastic, but it sounded genuine. Why? Because I remember being the only hearing person in my deaf grandmother's world. I remember how hard she had to fight to be seen as complete, as capable, and I remember the difference it made when someone bothered to learn her language. Miranda met his eyes. Your children deserve that. They deserve to have people meet them halfway. Something shifted in Jinwoo's expression. His jaw tightened, and when he spoke, his voice was rough. Their mother couldn't accept them being deaf. She wanted to fix them as if they were broken. She pushed for surgeries, therapies that were about changing them rather than supporting them. When I refused, he stopped, looking away. She left, filed for divorce, and walked away from 2 6-year-olds because they weren't perfect enough. Miranda's breath caught. Jinwoo, don't! He held up a hand. Don't pity me. Don't pity them. We're better off without her. But yes, I'm protective. Yes, I keep them away from people. Because the world has shown my children that being different means being disposable, and I won't let anyone make them feel that way again. The pain in his voice was visceral. Miranda wanted to reach across the table, to touch his hand, to offer comfort. But this was a billionaire, a powerful man, someone so far above her that they existed in different universes. She kept her hands in her lap. They're not disposable, she said quietly. They're extraordinary, and you keeping them in a bubble isn't protecting them. It's teaching them to protect themselves from something they shouldn't have to face alone. And you think you can help? It wasn't a question. Jinwoo leaned forward, and the intensity in his eyes made Miranda's stomach flip. You think you can just walk into our lives and fix things? I think I can talk to them in their language. I think I can show them that strangers aren't always threats. Miranda lifted her chin. And yes, I think I can help, if you'd let me. The silence that followed was electric. Mrs. Park was openly staring now, her eyes darting between Miranda and her son. Hana and Hyun had gone still, watching the adults with worried expressions. Jinwoo stood abruptly. Come work for me. Miranda blinked. What? As their tutor, their companion, whatever title you want. He pulled a business card from his wallet, set it on the table between them. I'll pay you 5 times whatever you're making here, plus benefits. You can finish your master's degree on my dime. All you have to do is spend time with my children, teach them, help them navigate the world, be the bridge you think they need. It was insane. Miranda had known this man for barely an hour, and he was offering her, what? A job? A life-changing opportunity? A trap? I don't know anything about you, she managed. You know I'm a father who loves his children. Jinwoo's voice was firm. You know they need someone like you. What else matters? Everything else matters, Miranda's rational brain screamed. This is dangerous. This is a mistake. This is how horror stories start. But Hana was signing at her, please, please say yes, and Hyun was nodding eagerly, and Miranda's student loans were drowning her, and her current job barely covered rent, and these children needed her. I'd need references, she heard herself say. Background checks, a formal contract. This isn't... I can't just... Done. Jinwoo picked up his phone, typed rapidly. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. You'll have everything vetted, everything legal and proper. But I want your answer now, Miranda Davis. Will you help my children? She should say no. Every instinct told her to run, to protect herself, to not get entangled in the complicated life of a billionaire and his traumatized kids. But she looked at Hana's hopeful face, at Hyun's careful guardedness starting to crack, and she couldn't. Yes, Miranda said. I'll help them. Jin Woo's smile was sharp and satisfied, like a predator that had just caught its prey. Good, you start Monday. Miranda's phone rang at 11 p.m. that night, jerking her out of an anxious half-sleep. She grabbed it, squinting at the unknown number, and made the mistake of answering. Is this Miranda Davis? The voice was female, professional, and cold enough to frost glass. Miranda sat up in bed, suddenly alert. Yes, who's this? I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Park's legal team. We need to discuss your upcoming employment. For the next 40 minutes, Miranda was walked through a contract so comprehensive it made her head spin. Non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality clauses, background check authorizations, terms of employment that included a salary so high, Miranda had to ask the woman to repeat the number 3 times. This is insane, Miranda said finally. I'm going to be a tutor, not a bodyguard. Mr. Park's children require special consideration. The lawyer's voice remained neutral. Your role extends beyond education. You'll be expected to accompany them to various events, serve as their interpreter, and essentially act as their primary connection to the hearing world when Mr. Park is unavailable. The compensation reflects the scope of responsibility. Miranda's head was spinning. And if I change my mind, then you'll be compensated for your time and asked to sign the non-disclosure agreement anyway. A pause. Ms. Davis, I've worked with Mr. Park for 5 years. He doesn't make offers like this lightly. If he believes you can help his children, then you can. The question is whether you have the courage to accept. After the call ended, Miranda lay in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. The answer came 48 hours later. Monday arrived with a car service that made her neighbours gawk, a black luxury sedan that probably cost more than her entire building. The driver was professional, silent, and navigated Manhattan's traffic like he'd been born to it. They drove for 45 minutes before the buildings gave way to suburbs, then estates, then a private road that led to gates that wouldn't have looked out of place at a European castle. Jin Woo Park's home was obscene, not in a gaudy way. Everything was tasteful, modern, elegant, but in the sheer scale of it. The mansion sprawled across manicured grounds, all glass and steel and sharp architecture. The inside was even more impressive. Soaring ceilings, minimalist furniture that probably cost 6 figures. Art that Miranda suspected was original. A housekeeper led her to a sunlit room on the 2nd floor that had been converted into a classroom. Educational materials lined the walls. Tablets and computers sat on a large table. A whiteboard covered one wall, already filled with notes in both English and Korean. Impressive, isn't it? Miranda turned to find Jin Woo in the doorway. He'd traded his suit for dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that hugged his frame in distracting ways. His hair was slightly dishevelled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and the casual look made him even more attractive. It's a lot, Miranda managed. My children deserve the best. He stepped into the room, and suddenly the space felt smaller. I've hired specialists before, tutors, therapists, educational consultants. They all came with degrees from prestigious universities and recommendations from important people, and none of them lasted more than a month. Why not? Because they saw deaf children as a problem to be solved, a deficit to overcome. Jin Woo's eyes met hers. You saw them as whole people having a conversation. That's why you're here. Before Miranda could respond, the door burst open and Hana and Hyun rushed in, signing excitedly. You came. You actually came. The next hour was a whirlwind. Miranda had planned to start with simple lessons, getting to know the children's academic levels, establishing structure. But Hana and Hyun had other ideas. They pulled her into games, showed her their favourite books, insisted she watch videos of their dance recitals. They were starved for attention, for connection, and Miranda found herself laughing, signing, swept up in their enthusiasm. Jin-woo watched from the doorway. He didn't interrupt, didn't interfere, but his presence was constant. Miranda could feel his eyes on her, tracking her interactions with his children, and the attention made her self-conscious in a way that had nothing to do with her job performance. If you're loving this story so far, please take 2 seconds to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It helps us reach more viewers and keeps this content coming. Thank you for being here and supporting the channel. Around lunchtime, a woman appeared in the doorway, mid-30s, beautiful in a cold, polished way, wearing designer clothes that screamed money. She looked at Miranda, then at the children, and her perfectly painted lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "So, you're the new tutor," she said in accented English. "How quaint." Jin-woo's expression went hard. "Soo-yeon, what are you doing here?" "Your mother invited me. We're having lunch." Soo-yeon stepped into the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood. "She wanted to discuss the charity gala next month. You know, the one you promised to attend with me." Miranda felt something cold settle in her stomach. This woman, Soo-yeon, was looking at Jin-woo with possessive familiarity, looking at Miranda with thinly veiled hostility. The territorial claim was obvious. "The children are in session," Jin-woo said flatly. "You're interrupting." "Oh, I'm sure Ms." Soo-yeon looked at Miranda expectantly. "Davis. Miranda Davis. I'm sure Ms. Davis won't mind taking a break." Soo-yeon's smile sharpened. After all, she's just the help. The words hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Hana and Hyun had gone still, their small faces tight with distress. They'd clearly dealt with Soo-yeon before. Miranda stood slowly. She was acutely aware of her jeans and simple blouse, the lack of designer labels, the gulf between her world and this woman's. But she'd dealt with people like Soo-yeon her entire life. People who thought money made them better, who used class as a weapon. "Actually," Miranda said pleasantly, "the children and I were just about to start an art project. It's going to get messy. I'd hate for you to ruin that beautiful dress." Soo-yeon's eyes flashed. How thoughtful. "Soo-yeon," Jin-woo's voice cut between them like a blade. "Leave, now." "But Jin-woo..." "Now." Something in his tone made Soo-yeon's confident mask crack. She looked between Jin-woo and Miranda, calculation visible in her eyes, then turned on her heel and walked out. But the look she threw over her shoulder promised that this wasn't over. After she left, Jin-woo turned to Miranda. "I apologize. Soo-yeon is persistent and wrong. You're not just the help. You're..." He paused, as if searching for words. "You're important. To my children, don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." The intensity in his voice made Miranda's heart skip. This was dangerous territory. She was an employee, nothing more. She couldn't let herself read meaning into his words, into the way he was looking at her like she mattered. "I should get back to the lesson," she said, breaking eye contact. "Yes, of course." But Jin-woo didn't move. He stood there, watching her, and Miranda felt the weight of something unspoken building between them. "Miranda, yes? Thank you for staying, for not running after what just happened." His voice dropped lower. "Most people would have." "I'm not most people," Miranda said. His smile was slow, devastating. "No, you're definitely not." 2 weeks passed in a strange, intense blur. Miranda fell into a routine, arrive at the mansion at 8, work with Hana and Hyun until 4, then head home to her apartment to work on her master's coursework. The children were brilliant, eager students who soaked up knowledge like sponges. They also desperately needed structure, consistency, someone who didn't treat their deafness as a limitation. But it was Jin-woo who occupied Miranda's thoughts during her sleepless nights. He was everywhere, working from his home office but checking in constantly. joining them for lunch, sitting in on lessons, watching Miranda with those dark, intense eyes. He asked questions about her teaching methods, her background, her life. He listened when she talked about her grandmother, about growing up between two worlds, and slowly, methodically, he was breaking down every professional boundary Miranda tried to maintain. "You should stay for dinner," he'd say, and it wouldn't be a question. "The children want you to join us for their swimming lesson," he'd announce. And suddenly, Miranda was at the mansion's pool, watching Hana and Hyun splash around while Jin-woo sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "I've arranged for you to attend the museum fundraiser this weekend," he'd inform her. "The children will be there. They'll need you." Each request was reasonable. Each one extended her time with the family just a little more, and each one blurred the line between employee and something else, something Miranda was afraid to name. The third Friday of her employment, Jin-woo found her in the library. After the children had gone to bed for the night, she'd stayed late to prep materials for the next week, and she was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear him approach until he spoke. "You don't have to work overtime." Miranda jumped, spinning around. Jin-woo stood in the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that had no business being that attractive. He looked tired, human, and dangerously appealing. "I wanted to finish this lesson plan," Miranda said, trying to steady her pulse. "The children are progressing so fast. I don't want to lose momentum." "You care about them." It wasn't a question. Jin-woo moved into the library, and Miranda became hyper-aware of how empty the mansion felt, how alone they were. "They're changing because of you. Hana asked me today why she couldn't go to school with hearing children if she had you to interpret. Hyun wants to join a regular art class." "That's good, isn't it?" Miranda asked carefully. "They're gaining confidence." "It's terrifying." Jin-woo stopped a few feet away, close enough that Miranda had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Because what happens when you leave? When this job ends and you move on to your real career? What happens to my children when they've gotten attached to someone who's temporary?" The pain in his voice was raw. Miranda understood then this wasn't about her professional competence. This was about his fear of his children being abandoned again. "Jin-woo," she said softly, "I'm not their mother. I'm not going to leave because they're deaf or because they're not perfect. I'm here because I want to be here, because they deserve to have someone who sees them." "And me?" His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Do you see me too?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Miranda's rational mind screamed at her to shut this down, to maintain professional distance, to not cross this line, but her body betrayed her, leaning slightly toward him, drawn by the magnetic pull she'd been fighting since the moment they met. "Yes," she admitted, "I see you." Jin-woo's hand came up, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. The touch was feather light, testing, and it sent electricity racing down Miranda's spine. "I can't stop thinking about you. About the way you smile at my children, about the sound of your laugh, about how you challenge me, push back, refuse to be intimidated." His thumb traced her lower lip. "Tell me to stop." Miranda should have. This was her employer. This was dangerous, messy, the kind of complication that could destroy everything. But she couldn't make herself say the words. "I should," she whispered instead. "But I won't." Jin-woo's control snapped. He kissed her like he was drowning, and she was air. Desperate, consuming, absolute. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head, and Miranda's world narrowed to the heat of his mouth, the press of his body, the way he kissed like he was claiming her. She'd never been kissed like this, had never felt this level of raw want, and it was terrifying and intoxicating all at once. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Jin-woo's eyes were nearly black with desire, his composure shattered. "Miranda!" The library door opened. Mrs. Park stood in the entrance, her expression unreadable as she took in the scene. her son and Miranda standing far too close, both flushed, obviously caught in the aftermath of something inappropriate. "Jin-woo," she said in Korean, then switched to English with obvious effort. "A word, now." Jin-woo's jaw clenched, but he stepped back from Miranda. "We'll finish this conversation later," he said, and the promise in his voice made her shiver. After he left with his mother, Miranda sank into a chair, her hands shaking. What had she done? She'd just kissed her employer, crossed every professional line, put her entire job at risk, and worse, she wanted to do it again. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You have 48 hours to quit and disappear. If you don't, I'll make sure you regret ever meeting the Park family." A friend. Miranda's blood ran cold. Someone had been watching, someone knew, and someone wanted her gone. Miranda didn't sleep that night. She sat in her apartment, staring at the threatening text, trying to decide what to do. Quit? Run? Ignore it and hope whoever sent it was bluffing. By morning, she'd made her decision. She wasn't running. She showed up at the mansion at exactly 8 a.m., ready for whatever came next. What she didn't expect was Jin-woo waiting for her in the foyer, his face drawn with exhaustion, his suit jacket missing, his tie undone. He looked like he'd been up all night too. "We need to talk," he said without preamble, guiding her into his office with a hand at the small of her back. The touch was possessive, protective, and it made Miranda's pulse spike despite her anxiety. Once the door closed, Jin-woo turned to her. "My mother confronted me last night, about us, about what she saw. Jin-woo, I'm sorry." "Don't!" He cut her off, moving closer. "Don't apologize for something I started. Don't apologize for something I don't regret." His hands framed her face, gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "My mother is concerned. She thinks I'm being reckless, that I'm putting my children at risk by getting involved with their tutor." She's not wrong. Miranda's heart sank. "So you want me to quit?" "No." The word was fierce. "I want you to understand what you're getting into. My life isn't normal. I have enemies, business rivals who would love to find a weakness they can exploit. I have women like Soo-yeon who think they have a claim on me because of my wealth and status. And I have 2 children who are already too attached to you, who will be devastated if this ends badly." He paused, his thumb stroking her cheek. "I'm not a safe choice, Miranda, but I'm selfish enough to want you anyway." She should be sensible, should recognize the red flags, the complications, the danger. But she was tired of being sensible. She'd spent her whole life playing it safe, taking the careful path, and where had it gotten her? Working dead-end jobs, drowning in student debt, watching life pass her by. "I got a threatening text last night," she said instead. "Someone told me to quit and disappear within 48 hours, or they'd make me regret meeting your family." Jin-woo went absolutely still. When he spoke, his voice was lethal. "Show me." Miranda pulled out her phone, hands steady despite her fear. Jin-woo read the message and something dark and dangerous crossed his face, something that reminded her that for all his tailored suits and cultured manners, this was a man who'd built an empire from nothing, a man who didn't become a billionaire by being soft. "I'll handle this," he said. "You're under my protection now." Jin-woo, no arguments. He pulled out his phone, made 3 calls in rapid Korean that Miranda couldn't follow. When he finished, he looked at her with absolute certainty. "I've assigned you a security detail. 2 professionals will be with you whenever you're not on my property. I've also had my IT team trace that number. We'll know who sent it by end of day." "This is insane," Miranda said. "I'm a tutor. I don't need bodyguards." "You're not just a tutor." Jin-woo's voice went soft, intense. "Not to my children and not to me, which means anyone who wants to hurt me might target you. I won't let that happen." The possessiveness in his tone should have been concerning, Instead, it made something warm bloom in Miranda's chest. Nobody had ever protected her like this. Nobody had ever made her feel precious enough to guard. "Your mother is right," Miranda whispered. "This is reckless." "Then we'll be reckless together." Jin-woo kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her throat tight. "Go to the children. They've been asking for you since 6 a.m. We'll deal with everything else later." By afternoon, Jin-woo's IT team had traced the threatening text to a burner phone purchased 3 days ago. The security footage from the store showed Soo-yeon making the purchase, her face clearly visible despite her attempt at disguise. "I want her arrested," Jin-woo said flatly when he showed Miranda the evidence. They were in his office again, this time with his head of security, a former military woman named Agent Kim, who looked like she could kill someone with a paperclip. Miranda had insisted on being included in the discussion, refusing to be protected from information that concerned her directly. "We don't have enough for charges," Agent Kim said. "It's a threat, but not explicit enough for legal action. However, we can use this to ensure Ms. Park understands that continued harassment will result in a restraining order and criminal charges." Miranda studied the grainy security footage. Soo-yeon looked composed, confident, completely unaware she was being recorded. "Why does she care this much? Jin-woo and this thing between us just started. Soo-yeon has been pursuing me for 2 years, Jin-woo said tiredly. Our families have business connections. She's beautiful, from the right background, speaks the right languages. On paper, she's perfect." He looked at Miranda. "But she sees my children as obstacles, not people. She suggested more than once that I should institutionalize them, that their deafness was too much of a burden for a man in my position." Rage, hot and immediate, flooded Miranda's veins. "She said what? Which is why she'll never be part of my life," Jin-woo continued. "But she doesn't accept rejection well. She thinks if she can eliminate any competition, I'll eventually come around." His hand found Miranda's. "She's about to learn she's very wrong. The charity gala is this weekend," Agent Kim reminded them. "Soo-yeon will be there. So will several business rivals and society reporters. If you want to make a statement, that's the venue." Jin-woo's smile was sharp. "Then we'll make a statement." The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, transforming the grand halls into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Women in designer gowns floated past ice sculptures. Men in tuxedos discussed business over champagne that probably cost more per bottle than Miranda's monthly rent. And Miranda was there, wearing a dress that had been delivered to her apartment that morning, a stunning emerald gown that hugged her curves and made her dark skin glow like polished mahogany. Jin-woo had included a note, "You're not just the help. Dress like the queen you are." Now she stood at the entrance to the main hall, trying not to panic. She'd attended formal events before, had navigated wealthy spaces, but never as the date of someone like Jin-woo Park, never with every eye in the room turning to assess, to judge, to wonder who she was and why she mattered. "Breathe," Jin-woo murmured in her ear. He looked devastating in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his hair styled back, his hand possessive on her lower back. "You belong here." "I really don't," Miranda said under her breath. "You belong wherever I say you belong." His voice was firm. "And tonight, you belong at my side." Hana and Hyun walked beside them, dressed in a matching formal wear that made them look like tiny royalty. They'd been thrilled when Jin-woo announced that Miranda would be accompanying them, that she'd be there to interpret, to make sure they could participate in the evening fully. Now they signed excitedly about the decorations, the food, the ice sculptures shaped like swans. The stares started immediately. Miranda felt them like physical touches. Curious, assessing, sometimes hostile. She recognized several faces from tabloid magazines, society columns. This was Jin-woo's world, and she was an outsider who'd somehow gained access. Jin-woo, darling! Soo-yeon materialized from the crowd, resplendent in a white gown that probably cost more than a car. She air-kissed Jin-woo's cheeks, completely ignoring Miranda, then smiled at the children with about as much warmth as a glacier. And the little ones. How quaint that you brought them. She called us little ones like we're pets, Hyun signed to Miranda, his small face tight with distress. She's just trying to be mean. Miranda signed back. Don't give her the satisfaction of caring. Soo-yeon, Jin-woo said coolly. You've met Miranda Davis, my girlfriend. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Miranda's breath caught. Girlfriend. He'd just claimed her publicly in front of everyone who mattered in his world. Soo-yeon's perfect mask cracked. I'm sorry, your what? Girlfriend, Jin-woo repeated and wrapped his arm around Miranda's waist, pulling her close. Miranda, you remember Soo-yeon, the woman who sent you that threatening text. Soo-yeon's face went pale. Around them, conversations stuttered to a halt. People were listening now, actively eavesdropping. Jin-woo, I don't know what you're... My security team has footage of you purchasing a burner phone. We have the text message records. We have everything. Jin-woo's voice never rose, but the menace in it was unmistakable. You're going to walk away now. You're going to leave my family alone. And if you ever threaten Miranda again, I'll make sure every business connection your family has with mine disappears overnight. Are we clear? Soo-yeon looked between them, fury and humiliation warring on her face. This is a mistake. She's nobody. She's everything. Jin-woo cut her off. And you're dismissed. The public rejection was brutal. Soo-yeon's hands clenched at her sides. And for a moment, Miranda thought she might actually make a scene. But then the woman turned on her heel and stalked away, her white gown swirling dramatically. The crowd around them erupted in whispers. Did he just... Who is she? I heard she's a waitress. He called her his girlfriend. Miranda's head was spinning. Jin-woo had just painted a target on both their backs, had claimed her in the most public way possible. This was real now. Terrifyingly, wonderfully real. Dance with me, Jin-woo said, and led her onto the floor before she could protest. His arms came around her, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers, and they moved together, like they'd been doing this for years. The music swelled, a waltz that Miranda barely knew, but Jin-woo led with such confidence that she didn't have to think. You just told everyone I'm your girlfriend, Miranda said, looking up at him. I did. We've known each other for 3 weeks. I know. His dark eyes held hers. I know this is fast. I know it's insane, but I haven't felt this alive in years, Miranda. You walk into a room and everything gets brighter. My children smile again. I smile again. So, yes, I'm claiming you, publicly and completely, because I'm terrified that if I don't, you'll realize this is crazy and run. What if I run anyway? She whispered. Then I'll follow you. His voice was absolute. I'll follow you anywhere. Miranda's heart was doing dangerous things in her chest. This is terrifying. I know. Jin-woo leaned down, his lips brushing her temple, but you're brave enough to handle it. You faced down a ballroom full of judging strangers, wearing a gorgeous dress, stood beside me while I publicly humiliated one of my peers. And you haven't flinched once. You're brave, Miranda Davis, braver than you think. The song ended. Applause rippled through the crowd, and when Jin-woo kissed her, right there, in front of hundreds of Manhattan's elite, Miranda stopped caring about what anyone thought. This was her life now. Complicated, terrifying, and absolutely worth it. The backlash came fast and vicious. By Monday morning, Miranda's social media was flooded with messages ranging from supportive to viciously racist. Tabloids had picked up the story. Billionaire's mystery woman, from server to socialite, one headline screamed. Her apartment building was surrounded by paparazzi. Even her online classes were interrupted by anonymous students asking invasive questions. Jinwoo's response was swift and comprehensive. He moved Miranda into the mansion for her safety, installing her in a guest suite that was bigger than her entire apartment. He had his legal team send cease and desist orders to the worst offenders. He increased her security detail, but what he couldn't protect her from was the insidious whisper campaign within his own circles. The suggestions that she was a gold digger, that she'd seduced him for money, that she was using his children to manipulate him. Even Mrs. Park, who'd been cordially neutral, started making pointed comments about appropriate relationships and protecting the family name. The pressure was suffocating. Miranda found herself snapping at Hana and Hyun during lessons, struggling to focus, waking up from nightmares about being exposed as a fraud. She was drowning and she didn't know how to ask for help. "You're pulling away!" Jinwoo found her in the garden late one night, 3 weeks after the gala. She'd been sitting on a bench, staring at nothing, trying to remember why she'd thought she could do this. "I don't belong here," Miranda said, without looking at him. "Everyone knows it. Your mother knows it. Your business associates know it. Even Hana and Hyun are starting to realize that that I can't. Stop!" Jinwoo sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Tell me what happened." "Your mother cornered me today. She was polite about it, but the message was clear. I'm not suitable. I don't have the right background, the right education, the right anything. And she's right, Jinwoo. I'm a tutor who works online classes and lives in a studio apartment. What am I doing playing house with a billionaire?" "You're not playing house." Jinwoo's voice was hard. "You're living your life. You're teaching my children, helping them grow, showing them they're capable of anything. You're standing beside me when society wants you to back down. That's not playing, Miranda. That's choosing courage over fear." "But what if it's not enough?" The question came out small, broken. "What if I'm not enough?" Jinwoo turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. "Listen to me. You are enough. You've always been enough. Everyone who makes you doubt that is wrong, including my mother, including those tabloids, including the voice in your head that says you don't deserve this." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I see you." His thumbs stroked her cheeks. "I see how hard you work, how much you care, how you put everyone else before yourself until you're running on empty. I see your strength, your kindness, your brilliance, and I see a woman who's terrified of being loved but desperate for it anyway." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Let me love you, Miranda. Let me show you that you're worth everything." Tears spilled down Miranda's cheeks. "What if I mess this up?" "Then we'll fix it together." Jinwoo kissed her forehead, her closed eyes, her tear-stained cheeks. "I'm not going anywhere. Neither are my children. We're yours now, whether you like it or not." "That's a terrible sales pitch," Miranda managed through her tears. "And yet, you're still here." His smile was gentle. "You're still fighting, still trying. That's all I ask, Miranda. Keep trying, keep staying. Let us be your family. Family." The word settled into her chest, warm and terrifying and perfect. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Everything changed 3 months later when Jinwoo's ex-wife filed a motion for custody. She claimed that Jinwoo was an unfit parent, that he was exposing the children to instability by dating Miranda, that Hana and Hyun would be better served in a more traditional environment. She wanted full custody, complete control, and the right to make all medical decisions, including, Miranda realized with horror, the decision to pursue cochlear implants against the children's will. "She's doing this to hurt me," Jinwoo said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. They were in his lawyer's office, surrounded by legal documents and case files. She walked away, she abandoned them, and now she wants to use them as weapons. "She has grounds," the lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Park Se-jin, said bluntly. The children are deaf. Their father is in a new relationship. There's been significant lifestyle disruption. A judge could decide that stability with their mother, even if she was absent, is preferable to upheaval with their father. That's insane, Miranda said. Hana and Hyun are thriving. They're happy, engaged, learning. But they're different, Attorney Park interrupted, and courts are often biased against difference. If Mrs. Park presents herself as wanting to help them, to normalize them through medical intervention, she could win sympathy from a judge who doesn't understand deaf culture. Miranda felt sick. The thought of those beautiful children being forced into procedures they didn't want, being told they were broken and needed fixing, was unbearable. What do we need to win? Jin-woo asked. Evidence that the children are thriving in their current environment. Expert testimony about deaf education and culture, character witnesses, and, Attorney Park looked at Miranda. We need you. Me? You're their primary educator. You've documented their progress. You understand both worlds, deaf and hearing. You can speak to how they've grown under their father's care. The attorney's expression softened slightly. You're also the person they trust most after their father. Your testimony could make or break this case. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Miranda spent every spare moment preparing, working with Attorney Park to document Hana and Hyun's development. The children knew something was wrong. They'd asked repeatedly why everyone seemed stressed, why their mother's name kept coming up. Finally, Jin-woo sat them down and explained, with Miranda translating into sign language. Your mother wants you to live with her, he signed carefully. She says she can take better care of you. There's going to be a court hearing, where a judge decides. Hana's face crumpled. But we don't want to live with her. She doesn't sign. She doesn't understand us. Will the judge make us leave? Hyun signed, his small hands trembling. Will we have to go even if we don't want to? Jin-woo pulled both children into his arms, holding them tight. When he looked at Miranda over their heads, his eyes were haunted. This was his worst fear realized. Losing his children, not through death or accident, but through a system that might not see them as he did. We're going to fight, Miranda signed when Jin-woo couldn't. Your father loves you, I love you, and we're going to make sure the judge understands how special you are. The courtroom was smaller than Miranda had expected, but no less intimidating. Jin-woo's ex-wife, Melissa Park, sat across the aisle with her lawyers. Dressed in elegant beige that screamed concerned mother, she looked nothing like Miranda had imagined, blonde, petite, with the kind of delicate beauty that society rewarded. Miranda, by contrast, felt too big, too dark, too everything. She'd worn her most professional outfit, a navy suit that Jin-woo had insisted on buying her, but she still felt like an imposter in this space. The proceedings were brutal. Melissa's lawyers painted a picture of unstable home life, inappropriate relationships, a father who prioritized his desires over his children's needs. They brought up Miranda's background, her student loans, the fact that she was living in Jin-woo's house. Isn't it true, Mr. Park, that Ms. Davis moved into your home less than 2 months after you met her? Melissa's lead attorney asked. For her safety, Jin-woo replied coldly. She was being harassed because of her association with my family. Convenient. And isn't it also true that you've been teaching your children that being deaf is acceptable, rather than seeking medical intervention? I've been teaching my children that they are perfect as they are, Jin-woo said, his voice hard. That their deafness is part of their identity, not a defect. And yes, I've chosen not to force them into procedures they don't want or need. Procedures that could help them function in normal society. There is no normal society, Jin-woo cut him off. There's just society. And my children are functioning beautifully. When it was Miranda's turn to testify, she walked to the witness stand with her heart hammering, Melissa's lawyer circled like a shark. Ms. Davis, you were hired as a tutor, correct? Yes. And now you're living with your employer and dating him. Do you see any ethical concerns with that arrangement? I see a man who cares about his children and a woman who fell in love with a family, Miranda said steadily. The relationship developed naturally. It didn't compromise my professional duties, didn't it? You're hardly objective about whether these children should remain with their father when you have a personal interest in staying close to him. My interest is in those children thriving, Miranda shot back. Which they are. Hana's reading level has jumped 2 grades in 4 months. Hyun just gave his first public presentation in ASL with interpretation. They're confident, happy, engaged with the world. That's what matters. But they're still deaf. The words hung in the air, ugly and damning. Miranda felt rage bubble up, hot and fierce. Yes, they're deaf, she said, her voice shaking with barely controlled emotion. And they're also brilliant, creative, funny, kind children who deserve to be seen as complete people, not problems to be fixed. Their mother abandoned them because she couldn't accept their deafness. Their father has built his entire life around ensuring they have every opportunity, every support, every tool they need to succeed. If this court can't see the difference, then the system is broken, not those children. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even Melissa's lawyer seemed taken aback. Judge Morrison, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, leaned forward. Ms. Davis, let me ask you something. In your professional opinion as someone trained in special education, what would happen to Hana and Hyun if they were removed from their current environment? Miranda took a breath. This was it, the moment that mattered. They would lose their language, she said quietly. Sign language is how they communicate, how they understand the world, how they express themselves. Mrs. Park doesn't sign. Her testimony made it clear she views their deafness as something to overcome through medical intervention. If Hana and Hyun went to live with her, they would be linguistically isolated in their own home. They'd lose their confidence, their sense of identity, their belief that they're valued for who they are, not who someone wants them to become. She looked directly at the judge. It would destroy them, not physically, but emotionally, psychologically. You'd be taking 2 thriving children and teaching them that the world rejects them for being different, that their own mother can't love them unless they change. Is that really in their best interest? Judge Morrison studied her for a long moment, then looked at the children, who sat quietly in the gallery with a court-appointed guardian. Hana was watching Miranda with wide, trusting eyes. Hyun's small hands were clenched in his lap. I'm going to take a recess to review the evidence, the judge said. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. The hour felt like a year. Miranda sat outside the courtroom with Jin-woo, neither of them speaking. His hand gripped hers so tightly it hurt, but she didn't pull away. If they lost this, if Hana and Hyun were taken from them, she couldn't let herself finish the thought. When they were called back in, Judge Morrison looked tired but resolved. She surveyed the courtroom, her gaze lingering on each person involved. I've reviewed all testimony, all documentation, and all expert opinions, she began. This is not a case about who loves these children more. By all accounts, both parents care deeply. This is a case about what environment will best serve Hana and Hyun's development as unique individuals. Melissa leaned forward, hope visible on her face. Jin-woo's grip on Miranda's hand tightened. The court recognizes that deaf children have the right to access their natural language and culture. We recognize that medical intervention, while sometimes beneficial, should not be forced upon children who are thriving without it. And we recognize that stability, in this case, means maintaining the linguistic and cultural environment these children have known their entire lives. Judge Morrison looked at Melissa. Mrs. Park, your desire to reconnect with your children is noted. However, your testimony made it clear that you view their deafness as a problem requiring correction. Until you can demonstrate understanding and acceptance of deaf culture, until you can communicate with your children in their language, this court cannot in good conscience award you custody. Melissa's face crumpled. Her lawyers immediately began whispering urgently. Primary custody remains with Mr. Park, the judge continued. Mrs. Park will be granted supervised visitation contingent on her completing a course in American Sign Language and demonstrating basic proficiency. Additionally, the court recommends family counselling to address the trauma of abandonment these children have experienced. She looked at Jin Woo. Mr. Park, the court also recommends that you formalise Ms. Davis's role in your household. Her contributions to your children's development are significant and should be recognised officially. The gavel came down. They'd won. Miranda stood in the massive backyard of Jin Woo's estate, watching Hana and Hyun run around with a group of deaf and hearing children from their new inclusive school programme. The kids were playing some elaborate game that involved a lot of signing, laughing, and occasional dramatic falls into the grass. Arms wrapped around her from behind, and Jin Woo's familiar scent enveloped her. Happy, he murmured against her ear. Ridiculously, Miranda admitted, leaning back against his chest. Though I still can't believe you convinced me to move in officially. You were already living here. I just made it official. His lips brushed her temple. And gave you a ring. Miranda's left hand felt heavy with the weight of the engagement ring Jin Woo had presented 3 months ago, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds that caught the light with every movement. She was still getting used to it. To being engaged, to planning a wedding that somehow involved both Korean and American traditions. Your mother is never going to fully approve of me, Miranda said. She's getting there. She admitted last week that you've been good for the children. That's progress. Jin Woo turned her around to face him, and I don't need her approval. I need you, just you, exactly as you are. Before Miranda could respond, Hana and Hyun ran over, signing excitedly about their game. They'd grown so much in the past months, more confident, more open, more willing to engage with the world. They had friends now, real friends who signed with them, played with them, treated them like they were complete. Can we have ice cream? Hana signed, hopefully. It's not even lunchtime, Miranda signed back. But it's Saturday, Hyun added, as if that explained everything. Jin Woo laughed. Ice cream sounds perfect. Go tell the others. The children ran off, whooping, and Jin Woo pulled Miranda closer. I have something for you, he said, suddenly serious. Jin Woo, you just bought me a car last week. Not that kind of something. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. I've been working with the university. They've agreed to create a new position, Director of Deaf Education and Advocacy. It's a full-time role with a substantial salary, comprehensive benefits, and the authority to develop curriculum, hire staff, and shape policy. He handed her the envelope. It's yours if you want it. Miranda stared at the envelope, afraid to open it. This is my dream job. This is everything I've been working toward. I know. His voice was soft. You've spent months helping my children, supporting me through the custody battle, building a life here. But you have your own dreams too. I don't want you to give them up for us. She opened the envelope with shaking hands. The offer letter was real, official, offering her everything she'd dreamed of and more. Tears blurred her vision. How? She whispered. I may have made some strategic donations, called in a few favours, pointed out that the university's deaf education programme was severely underfunded and needed someone brilliant to transform it. He tilted her chin up. You earned this, Miranda. The board reviewed your work, your master's thesis, your documentation of Hana and Hyun's progress. They want you because you're exceptional. I love you, Miranda said. the words bursting out of her. God, I love you so much, it's terrifying. Jinwoo's smile was brilliant. Good, because you're stuck with me now. Me, two deaf children who adore you, a disapproving mother-in-law who's slowly coming around, and a life that's going to be complicated and messy and absolutely worth it. He kissed her, slow and deep. Welcome to the family, Dr. Davis. Not a doctor yet, Miranda mumbled against his lips. You will be. You're going to finish that doctorate, start that program, change lives. His hands framed her face. And I'm going to be right here, watching you shine, protecting you from anyone who tries to dim that light. From across the yard, Hana and Hyun signed for them to hurry up. The ice cream was melting. Miranda laughed, grabbed Jinwoo's hand and ran toward the children who'd become hers in every way that mattered. A year ago, she'd been a struggling server with crushing debt and fading dreams. Now she was engaged to a man who saw her as a queen, mother figure to two extraordinary children, and about to start the career she'd always wanted, all because she'd been brave enough to sign hello to two invisible children. Sometimes, Miranda thought, as Jinwoo swept her into another kiss while the children giggled around them, the smallest act of kindness really could change everything. The end. Thank you for watching till the very end. You are the best. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more Afro-Korean romance content. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from.